What if the deadliest disaster in history was one you couldn't even see? Imagine an enemy that's invisible, tasteless, odorless, yet deadly. This is the grim reality of radiation, an unseen danger that has the potential to wreak havoc on an unimaginable scale. Now cast your minds back to the late 20th century, to a time of geopolitical tension and technological advancement. Amidst all this, a catastrophe was brewing at the heart of the then Soviet Union, in a place called Chernobyl. This was not a war, nor a natural disaster, but a man-made calamity that would go down in history as the worst nuclear power plant accident ever. The Chernobyl disaster was a stark reminder of the invisible threat that radiation poses, a threat that remains as potent today as it was back then. So, buckle up, brace yourselves, and join us as we delve into the timeline of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. The road to disaster was paved with a series of unfortunate decisions. The Chernobyl catastrophe, one of the most devastating nuclear accidents in history, did not happen in isolation. It was the culmination of a multitude of factors, each contributing to what would become a disastrous event of unparalleled proportion. First, let's talk about the reactor design. The Chernobyl power plant employed the use of an RBMK reactor, a design notorious for its instability at low power levels. These reactors, while efficient in producing plutonium, were inherently flawed. They were not equipped with a containment structure, a crucial safety feature present in most nuclear reactors around the world. This absence of a protective shell meant that, in the event of an accident, radioactive material could be released directly into the environment. However, these design flaws alone were not enough to set the stage for disaster. Without a series of unfortunate decisions leading up to that fateful night, the reactor's design flaws might have never been exposed. The stage was set when the plant's operators decided to conduct a late-night safety test. The goal was to see how long the turbines would keep spinning and producing power if the plant's main electrical power supply was lost. Sounds like a reasonable test, right? But here's the catch. This test, which required the reactor to be in a very unstable low-power mode, had already been attempted and failed several times before. In the early morning hours of April 26, 1986, plant operators, desperate to complete the test, disregarded safety protocols. They removed too many control rods, causing the reactor to reach dangerously unstable low power levels. The stage was set. The combination of an inherently flawed reactor design, coupled with a risky safety test conducted under unsafe conditions, was a recipe for disaster. And then on that fateful night in April 1986, disaster struck. In the early morning hours of April 26, 1986, the world changed forever. On this fateful night, a routine safety test at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Soviet Union spiraled into a cataclysmic disaster. The test, intended to simulate a power outage and establish how long the reactor's turbines could continue generating power, was scheduled during a shift change, a decision that would later be scrutinized. As workers prepared for the test, they disabled several safety systems, including the emergency core cooling system. They were confident in the plant's safety measures, unaware of the impending peril. The reactor, burdened by a volatile combination of design flaws and operator error, was pushed into unstable territory. The power levels plummeted, then surged dramatically. In a desperate bid to regain control, the operators made a fatal mistake. They pressed the emergency shutdown button, intending to insert all control rods into the reactor core. But due to a design flaw, the rods jammed, causing a rapid increase in power. Within moments, two powerful explosions occurred, ripping apart the reactor and its building. The blasts were so powerful that they blew off the 1,000-ton lid of the reactor, igniting a fire that blazed for 9 days. This wasn't just any fire. It was a nuclear inferno, spewing an enormous cloud of radioactive material into the atmosphere. The deadly particles drifted over the nearby town of Pripyat, then over Ukraine, Belarus, and beyond. Unseen, unheard, these invisible killers contaminated land, water, and air, marking the beginning of a nuclear disaster that would haunt the world for generations to come. The workers at the plant, unaware of the full extent of the catastrophe unfolding around them, continued their desperate and heroic efforts to contain the situation, but the damage was done, the reactor was destroyed, and a deadly cloud of radiation was already on the move. In the aftermath of the explosion, the true scale of the disaster began to emerge. Radiation, invisible and deadly, began to spread across Europe. In the immediate aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster, the world held its breath. The invisible enemy of radiation was on the move, carried by the wind and the rain. It seeped into the soil, the water, the very air people breathed. It was not confined by borders or boundaries, it spread its deadly touch far and wide. The town of Pripyat, once bustling with life, was eerily silent. The Soviet authorities, realizing the magnitude of the disaster, ordered the evacuation of the entire town. Nearly 50,000 people were uprooted from their homes, their lives, their sense of safety. They left behind their belongings, believing, hoping they would return soon. But Pripyat became a ghost town, a chilling reminder of the catastrophe. This evacuation, however, was just the beginning. The radioactive fallout spread across Europe, reaching as far as Sweden and Italy. It contaminated the land, the crops, the livestock. It seeped into the everyday life of millions, an invisible threat that lingered for years. Yet amidst this chaos and fear, there were sparks of heroism. The first responders, firefighters, and the liquidators, those brave men and women tasked with the cleanup of the disaster site, risked their own lives to prevent further catastrophe. They toiled in unimaginably harsh conditions, often without adequate protection, to contain the disaster. Their courage and sacrifice saved countless lives, and they became symbols of resilience in the face of adversity. But the fallout was not just physical, it left deep psychological scars on the survivors, the evacuees, and the wider population. Fear of radiation, of the unseen danger, became a part of their everyday lives. The world watched, learned, and mourned. But the effects of the accident were far from over. The legacy of Chernobyl is still felt today, more than 3 decades later. The Chernobyl disaster has left a deep and lasting impact, not only on the immediate vicinity, but also on the world at large. Its long-term consequences are as complex as they are far-reaching. One of the most devastating consequences is the increase in cancer rates, especially thyroid cancer, among those exposed to the radiation. Children, in particular, bore the brunt of this impact, with thousands diagnosed in the years following the catastrophe. Despite advances in medical technology and treatment, the shadow of Chernobyl looms large over their lives. At the heart of this disaster is the exclusion zone, a 30-kilometer radius around the power plant that's been deemed uninhabitable due to high levels of radiation. This ghostly landscape, once bustling with life, now stands as a chilling testament to the disaster. Yet it also serves as a refuge for wildlife, with species like wolves, deer, and even rare Przewalski's horses flourishing in the absence of human interference. The containment of the radiation is an ongoing challenge. The original sarcophagus, a concrete and steel structure built to encase the damaged reactor, began to deteriorate in less than 2 decades. In response, an international effort led to the construction of the new safe confinement, a colossal arch that now covers the old sarcophagus. Yet even this is not a permanent solution. The task of dismantling the reactor and managing the radioactive waste still lies ahead. The economic fallout is also significant. The cost of the cleanup, the loss of power production, and the ongoing healthcare and social costs have run into the hundreds of billions. These costs have weighed heavily on Ukraine and Belarus, the 2 countries most affected by the disaster. The Chernobyl disaster serves as a stark reminder of the potential dangers of nuclear power. It underscores the importance of safety and preparedness in our pursuit of harnessing atomic energy. The long-term consequences of Chernobyl will continue to unfold for decades, if not centuries to come. Each revelation brings with it new lessons, as we strive to prevent such a disaster from ever happening again. Chernobyl was a tragedy, but it also provided valuable lessons. This catastrophic event underscored the importance of transparency. When information is hoarded, the consequences can be disastrous. The accident at Chernobyl laid bare the risks of secrecy and the dire need for honesty, especially in matters of public safety. Chernobyl also taught us the significance of safety protocols. No stone should be left unturned when it comes to ensuring the security of nuclear facilities. The accident highlighted the fatal flaws in the then Soviet Union's nuclear safety measures, prompting a global re-evaluation of nuclear safety standards. Moreover, it emphasized the necessity of international cooperation. Nuclear accidents don't respect borders. Their effects ripple out, affecting nations far and wide. Chernobyl brought this harsh reality to the forefront, spurring nations worldwide to work together in the pursuit of safer nuclear energy. While the memory of Chernobyl remains haunting, it continues to guide and inform our approach to nuclear safety today.